What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Robinson Motorsports. Tonight I'm going to be rebuilding and revalving my KYB SSS forks on Project Frankenripper. Stick around. Just like my shock I got with my buddy Justin Beers at offroadtechinfo.com, and he hooked me up with a decent shim stack that should be pretty good for my weight and what I'm trying to ride. So we're gonna go ahead and replace the seals and the bushings while we're in there. I bought an OEM Yamaha kit. They come with seals, wipers, and both the bushings, and it's like $10 more than the all balls or wherever you go to get yours. So it's OEM spec, obviously, because they come from the manufacturer, and they have bushings in it, which you should probably replace anytime that you're inside there. So let's get to it. If you have KYB SSS forks, you need these two tools. Plain and simple. Tusk, they're like 20 bucks, I think. They're not too bad. Before you even take your fork off of your triple here, you're going to want to loosen the top chamber up. The chamber, not the cap. This tool goes inside the cap. You really don't have to loosen that up while it's in there. You just actually have to loosen that body up. You'll thank me later. Now with your front wheel off, you don't have to take your fender off, but I don't have a fender on this yet. So front wheel's off. If you're going to do the brake side, you need to take the brake caliper off. I've already done that side, so I'm going to be moving to this side and filming that one. So you're going to loosen these two bolts here, and then you should just be able to twist and slide this out. I'll take it over to the bench and tear it apart. You're going to want to clean this the best as you can, get all up in the knuckle here, things like that, just so you're not working with too much dirt on the bench. Once you get that all done, you just want to loosen this cap all the way up. Slide this down. Dump all the oil out. Once you get all that oil drained out, I want to take this bottom bolt here off. So you're going to want to compress all this down. You wouldn't be able to do this because there's no spring in this. But you push it all down. That's where the little fork here comes in handy in your tool. You can slide it in there and it holds everything kind of together, so you can take this bolt off the top. Once that's off, pull the dampener rod out, slide the chamber out of it. Then you have just your fork tube and your fork leg, oil seals in here. All your valving is done in there. So we're going to go ahead and tear that apart now. Alright, now I've got this in my voice with a set of soft jaws, and it's not very tight. It's just, that's the weight of the handle, just enough to hold it for me. Take our tool, put this one on, take our cap tool, take a 19, push the dampener rod up, it'll push this out. Drain all the oil out of here. So you have your top, this is considered the base valve, and your mid valve is in here. Alright, to get the damper rod with the mid valve out, you want to take this little nut off right here. Spin that off, push that all the way up, and then there's your mid valve. Set this body aside to drain. Now if you look at these, there's a peen on the end of these shafts. You can see it just rolls the threads over and it kind of locks in this nut. So what we need to do is we need to grind that peen off without removing too much of the face here. You can see on the mid valve it's about the same. So go over to the grinder and hopefully not mess this up. You'll know if you got it real close, because this washer would be able to come right off. Yep, there we go. See, it's not too bad. There's a little burr in there. But I think I can get the whole stack off without having to file that. Oh, we're not going to get past the valve. Okay. Take a regular file, a shim you know you're not going to use. Put that shim on there, because we're trying to protect that valve body now. We're just going to go around the edge of this. Off everything comes. There you have it. With the tool still in the head. This one's already wanting to come off because it's so loose. Alright, before I get into any of this fun stuff that I have laid out here, we're going to take both these valves, well, valve bodies, piece of glass, a piece of 800 wet dry sandpaper. We're just going to clean up these faces, make sure they're flat and true, so when those shims close on them, we have a nice tight seal. So I've got all my notes here, what they were, or what the stock is, which is actually laid out here, and stack that Justin and I came up with. There's so many things going on here, it's always good just to have the workspace clear and everything laid out in front of you, so then you can build the stack from there. Because I'm going to be using some of the shims from the stock setup, and I have all the new shims laid out in order, thickness, and size all the way up through. So they're easily accessible, and I don't have to sit there and keep measuring every single one of them with the set of calipers that I have. I'm just going to go ahead and start building these stacks up. Alright, now the mid-valve stack is built. We want to check the float. In here there's a little spring that when this opens up, it has a little bit of a gap. So you want to measure what that float is between this washer right here and that first shim. Now part of this whole revalving thing is to take that float and we're going to increase it. I can tell you right now stock is 0.25 millimeters. And I'm going to be increasing that. This one I can barely get a 2 in because I changed the stack and the float's definitely changed. So we're going to take this apart. I'll show you where I'll put the shim. I don't know if you can see it, but right inside there's a little groove where this bushing in here slides into. So if we take a shim and put it on top of that bushing, that's the same inside diameter and outside diameter of that bushing. We can raise this valve body up and down on top of this, increasing the float. So that's what we're going to try doing, and then measuring it. I would do a little bit more than just tightening it by hand. I would actually put the wrench on the inside here and kind of give it a little bit of torque. You want that stack squashed right up against there. So we're going to measure this again. This is the one we want. And I think that's where I want it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this nut back off, spray that down with some shop salve, clean that up so we have clean dry threads to apply red Loctite on it. A little bit of red Loctite. Mid valve's done. Let's go build the base valve. The stack's all built. Red Loctite in the nut. Alright, now it's time to start rebuilding. Inner chamber right here. Take your dampener rod, slide it down in. Hold that all the way through. Put your little nut on the end of it here, all the way down as far as it'll go. Take your fork oil, pour some in there. Kind of want to fill that bottom chamber the best that you can. Bleed all the air out of it. Put a little bit more in there. It says like 148. I think I got this set at 150. Make sure your dampener rod's all the way down. Take this assembly here, slide it in, and in one good motion, push down and try to thread that in. Nice and tight. Now, when you push this dampener rod up, you're going to get oil out of it. So I get it close to an oil pan, then you know it's good if you push this all the way up. Should come all the way down by itself. Set that aside. Alright, now this part's pretty much the same on, I'd say, any inverted fork that I've ever done. So take this apart, screwdriver, pop the dust seal. Try not to scrape up your tube, obviously. Grab a pick. I like this one because it's got a little bit of a hook or an angle to it. Get in there, pop the snap ring. Pop that off. Then from there, once the snap ring's off, you just use the whole thing like a slide hammer and pop it apart. This bushing, you gotta split this bushing apart right here. Slide that off. Then you can slide this bushing off. Slide the oil seal and the washer off. And the rest of everything. So if we look at the seals, the outside copper is kind of worn off. You can see Teflon starting to roll just a little bit. I usually replace them no matter what. If this copper is worn, I think that's worn enough for me to replace it. So I really can't stress this enough right now. You have everything in your front suspension taken apart. So go ahead and do a really good thorough cleaning. If you need to go and get your toothbrush to clean some of this stuff, do it now because it's apart. If there's any dirt in here when you put it back together, you're actually going to be bringing contamination already into it. So now is a good time to just clean everything, inspect it, note some wear, things like that. If you look at this tube right here, it's kind of glazed over. There's a little bit of, I don't know if we can get this in the camera. Right here, you can just see vertical lines from the fork seals, from them being dirty. You want to check for any nicks, anything that your fingernail can catch in here, and you want to sand or smooth those out. Before I put it all back together, grab some Scotch-Brite. This is the purple stuff because I couldn't find any red, but I think the green stuff will do just the same amount. And just put a crosshatch in it. You're just trying to scuff that surface up so it'll hold some oil instead of it being all nice and shiny. I don't know if you can see this now, but all of those marks are gone. And it's got a nice crosshatch in it, micro polishing, whatever the hell you want to call it. But that looks good. Alright, now we're actually going to assemble this. Really simple. Your oil seal and wiper are really easy to tell the difference. You can see the wiper's actually got like a big lip right here, and your oil seal is flat. So you always want, oil seal's got 2 springs on it, but you always want this inner lip. There's a dual lip kind of in here. The one that sticks out is the one that's going to go towards the air. The one that's on the inside here, where it's kind of like 2 of them, you're going to want to put that towards the oil. To assemble this, use a seal bullet. They're cheap. You can use electrical tape. I've used electrical tape for a while, but these seal bullets work mint. So I'm happy I finally bought some. First thing, go on, lube up your dust seal. Slide that on, snap ring, oil seal. Pull this off, toss that aside. Then you have this cool little washer right here. You can see that there's 4 fingers on it here. If you look on the inside, they're actually recessed. Let's see if you can see that right there by my finger. You're gonna want the face of it, where they're sticking out the most, towards the bushing. So this side of it that's open is gonna go towards the seal. So then when you have your bushing on, you have the, let's see if I can get this. See how it's kind of open in there? It's going up against the seal, so it's on the outside rib of the seal. Then the bushing is going to hit those teeth and not go into it. If it's the other way around, the bushing will go inside of it, and you don't want that. This bushing, spread apart, slide it into that groove that was in before. It'll snap in there. You can see this gap closed up. That's all. Take your outer tube, slide it on. Before you put this together, I like to take this bushing, slide it down in there, take your seal driver, make sure that's down in its home there. Take the washer, same thing, encourage it. Take your seal, slide that down in. It's in there. Snap ring. Easy peasy. Make sure all 4 little tabs are seated in there and snapped into place. Then for the dust seal, you're in there, you're good to go. Take your spring. Slide your spring on, make sure your perch is on there as well. Slide this whole assembly together. You might need to put your finger in this hole here and kind of work that dampener rod through this hole. Compress the spring enough that you can put the tool in right here. Sorry you didn't kind of see that there, but take your dampener rod, slide that in there, take your base nut, spin that on. If you notice, you get so far and it'll bottom out. Well, it bottoms out and you still have a gap right here. See if we can get that. See, there's a gap there. That's a good thing. So then you want to take this nut right here and drive it into here. Tighten that down. Alright, now, ever so slightly, compress that spring, dropping your tool out, and be careful when you put this in there, because, there we go. You don't want to damage those threads. Now you kind of hit it with an impact, but I'll just put the axle in and tighten it down. Last thing to do is 350 cc's of fork oil in this chamber here. Alright, let's get this fork on there and this front tire on so Frankenripper can be on its own wheels. it's important to actually use a torque wrench to torque these, because you have the lower fork leg assembly, those bushings we just replaced, passing through this spot right here. So you want to make sure that these are torqued to spec. The top I wouldn't say matters as much as this, but they still matter. We're going to torque these. Since I did the steering stem bearings, we're going to tighten the castle nut here. We're going to torque the top nut, and then we're going to torque the top clamps. There we go. Because I can't, that's it. Last thing we're going to do is tighten those top caps. Now when I install a front wheel, I tighten the axle to this fork leg. I'm going to torque this fork leg, and then I got a tool I'm going to show you how to use. So I got this tool right here, Motion Pro Fork True 08-0412 is the number. There's two different ways that a lot of people, old school, spin the front wheel, stab the front brake, align your forks that way, or tighten the bolt down, bounce up and down on it a couple times and align it. I found this tool, I guess it's too expensive for its own good, but it actually makes it a lot easier, especially when you're putting stuff together on the bench here. Basically all you do, it's got two little set screws, and it adjusts this way. Find a good spot up here, set it to pretty much the taper there. That was a little wide. There, it's nice and tight there. Not rocking, not going back. You want to check the side to side movement on it. Now if you really want to know, you can come down here, check that. That's decent. Then you go between the spokes here. It doesn't matter, just get it between spokes. Then you can spin the wheel and get it where you really get it as low down to the pinch bolts as you can. Your brake rotor is obviously going to stop you from going so far. Let's see if I can get this right down, right down there in the brake rotor. Now I'm pretty close here. Let me bring you in. I'm pretty close. You can see there's a little bit of play over there. So now what you do to correct that is you find that spot here and probably tap that to exactly where it needs to go. Torque these down. There you have it. So basically this project is this much done. I still have this much to do. So hit that subscribe button, and I will see everyone in the next one.